Hello? Okay. I have the honor of introducing Maxim Leo, whose memoir of both a country and a family and of himself, Red Love, just came out. I believe it was first published in 2009 in Germany. And Maxim's also an editor, a journalist. But this story is of his life and family in GDR, and that sort of encapsulates everything from before the World War II to the wall coming down. And maybe best to hear it in his own words, so he'll read now.
Thank you very much. So I'm the icebreaker here. That's my first reading in English. So I was just coached a little bit by the front desk woman in our hotel. I read the little text, and she's from Puerto Rico, and she gave me some advice. So if I have a little Puerto Rico accent infusion with an East German accent, it's due to this situation. I will just read something from the beginning, and we don't have so much time, and 8 minutes, or 7 minutes? 4 minutes. Well, you have 4 minutes, I have 8 minutes, yeah. Because I'm from East Germany. Okay, we will do it. If I'm not stopped, you can go. Okay. Okay. When I stepped into the hospital room, Gerhard laughed. He said something, wired, throaty words came out of his mouth. Then he laughed again. I can't remember my grandfather ever being so pleased to see me. The doctor told me the stroke had damaged the language center in Gerhard's brain. All he could do now was express emotions. The rational side of him was blocked. I reflected that it had been precisely the other way around before. Gerhard talked away at me. I pretend I understood. Eventually I told him that unfortunately I didn't understand anything at all. Gerhard nodded sadly. Perhaps he had hoped I might be able to free him from his speechlessness, just as I had sometimes helped him out of his emotional stiffness in the past, with a joke or a cheeky remark that shook his authority. I was the clown of the family, the one nobody suspected of evil intentions. I could overstep the mark with the hero of the family, the man no one else dared to contradict. A clear spring light shone through the window of the hospital room. Gerhard's face was slack and empty. He said nothing. I would have liked to have a conversation with him, I mean a real conversation. Usually conversations with Gerhard turned into monologues about his latest success after 10 minutes at the most. He talked about books he happened to be writing, about lectures he had given, about newspaper articles people had written about him. A few times I tried to learn more about him, more than the stories everybody knew, but he didn't want to. Perhaps he was scared of getting too close to himself, that he had got used to being a monument. It was too late now. This man, for one language, had always been so much important. The most important thing has become speechless. I can't ask him questions anymore. No one can. He's going to keep his secrets. Gerhard was a hero even before he entered adulthood. At the age of 17, he had fought with the French resistance, was tortured by the SS and freed by partisans. After the war, he came back to Germany as a victor and built up the GDR, that state in which everything was to be better. He became an important journalist, a part of the new power. They needed people like him at the time, people who had done everything right in the war, people you could refer to if you wanted to explain why this anti-fascist state had to exist. They sent him to schools and universities. Again and again, he talked about his fight against Hitler, about torture, about victory. I grew up with those stories. I was proud to belong to this family, to this grandfather. I knew Gerhard had a pistol at some point and that he knew how to use explosives. When I visited my grandparents in Friedrichshagen, there was apple cake and fruit salad. Again and again, I asked Gerhard to talk about the past. Gerhard talked about frightening Nazis and courageous partisans. Sometimes he jumped up and acted out a play with different parts. When Gerhard played a Nazi, he put his face into a grimace and spoke in a deep, gurgling voice. After the performance, he would usually give me a bar of milk or chocolate. Even today, I think of those monster Nazis every time I eat milk or chocolate. In the presence of adults, Gerhard wasn't as funny. He didn't like anyone in the family to go around politicking, as he put it. In fact, everybody who didn't like Gerhard, believed in the GDR, was politicking around the place in one way or another. The worst was Wolf, my father, who wasn't even a member of the party but had married Gerhard's favorite daughter, Anne, my mother. There were lots of arguments, mostly about things I only really understood later on. About the state, about society, about the cause, whatever it happened to be. Our family was like a miniature GDR. It was here that the struggles took place, the ones that couldn't be fought out anywhere else. Here, ideology collided with life. Collided with life, she said in the Portuguese. No, the Puerto Rico. The struggle raged for whole years. It was the reason my father went around the house shouting, while my mother secretly cried in the kitchen, why Gerhard became a stranger to me. Gerhard and I sat together for a while on that spring day in that hospital room, which smelled of canteen food and disinfectant. It was slowly getting dark outside. Gerhard had caved in on himself. His body was there, but he seemed to be somewhere else. It might sound strange, but I had the feeling that the GDR only really came to an end at that moment. 18 years after the fall of the wall, the stern hero had disappeared. Before me, there sat a helpless, lovable man, a grandfather. When I left, we hugged, which I don't think we'd ever done before. I walked down the long hospital corridor and felt at once sad and elated. That day, I wished for the first time that I could go back to the GDR to understand what had actually happened there, to my grandfather, to my parents, to me. What had driven us apart, what was so important that it had turned us into strangers, even today. The GDR has been dead for ages, but it's still quite alive in my family, like a ghost that can't find peace. Eventually, when it was all over, nothing more was said about those old struggles. Perhaps we hoped things would sort themselves out, that the new age would heal the old wounds. But it wouldn't leave me be. I went to archives, I rummaged in cupboards and boxes, I found old photographs and letters, a long-forgotten diary, secret files. I asked my family questions, one after the other, for days, weeks. I asked the questions that I normally never have dared go near. I was allowed to do that because I was a genealogist now. And all of a sudden, our little GDR was there again, as if he had been waiting to emerge again, to show off from every angle, correct a few things, and perhaps lose some of the rage and grief that were still there. On that journey into the past, I became, oh, that's the hardest word in the text, reacquainted with Gerhard and Wolf. And I discovered Werner, my other grandfather, whom I'd barely known until then. I think something was set in motion after the day with Gerhard in the hospital. A speechless man, made us speak. Thank you very much.
In that prologue, you talk about how your family is sort of the GDR in miniature, and it's true that on your mother's side of the family, your grandfather fought in the resistance, and on your father's side, your grandfather was a Nazi soldier. My first question for you is actually sort of out of my just absolute curiosity, because this is the first time I have read a memoir of anyone in the GDR, is that in America we have a big infatuation with ancestry and genealogy, and you're kind of acting as a genealogist in writing this. But I've always been uneasy personally asking my German friends about their ancestors for fear of this sort of weird connection to the war and what side they were on. And I wondered if you find in Germany there is a wariness about talking about the past or one's ancestors. Or...
No, my feeling is that today they love to speak about the past, and they love to see movies, to see theater plays, to read books. The Third Reich is very. If the Spiegel is a huge news magazine in Germany, it has a cover about the Third Reich. They can double the copies and it's almost now a very popular theme, and it's even becoming a sort of entertainment. You know, the Third Reich is now becoming an inspiration for movies and for theater pieces, and people are in parallel. People are very hungry to tell her own story, I think, and that I discovered that when I spoke with my own family, there was a need to communicate, to share, to ask questions and to answer questions.
Well, that's interesting because the prologue sort of starts when your grandfather can't speak anymore, and there's something about him not speaking that makes you sort of go on this quest to find out about your family. And when you interviewed your mother, there were times when she cried from remembering the past. Were they at all reticent about your writing about their personal lives as well as their relationship with the country and the parties?
It wasn't so easy for them, I think. It's never easy to because I made interviews with them, but they knew that I will publish a book, and to get out all this family, very intimate story stuff to very public it's difficult to admit, but. We had a clear deal. I can do only this project with your help, and but you're not allowed to say me I don't like that. If you tell me it's not true, we can debate about that. But when we start this project, you have to trust me, and I'm chief of the project.
And fortunately, as a child.
They liked it. Fortunately, they liked it, and there were no big problems after all.
There are certain, obviously, fascinating things that you only discovered when you went back and looked at their lives. I mean, it wasn't like you already knew their stories fully, especially with your maternal grandfather. I was just amazed by the fact that everyone got access to their Stasi files, for example. Afterward, and that you could look up sort of facts that the government was collecting about its citizens. Were those just everyone has them in their home next to their cookbooks, or how do people store that information?
But there's a sort of ministry of Stasi files, and you can ask for to see if you have a file. It was some funny situation after the wall came down, because more the Stasi fight was big, more it was important in the resistance before, and some people who thought they were very important in the resistance and the Stasi fight was a little bit embarrassing.
I have one more question for you because I guess it's a short thing. There's great parts about being in East Berlin, and as you're a child, you play Escape to the West. There's a point when you're a teenager where you, with your friends, dress up as Westerners and pretend to be Western tourists through East Berlin. There's obviously this amazing craving to be on the other side of the wall. And then, of course, when it comes down, you mentioned how the first thing when you're stepping across is you forgot your pack of cigarettes and can you come back? I mean, is it strange now to think about that childhood where you wanted to be part of the West and it was just there on the other side versus now where, obviously, Berlin.
But we played with the reality. It was a sort of game to, especially to be Western tourists in East Berlin. We had all newspaper from the West, and we pretended to be from the West, and it worked very well with women, with East German women until midnight, because we had to German from the Western side wasn't allowed to stay at night. So if you were at 1 o'clock in the morning, you're still there. You're not from the West, and so we had to go at midnight. But it was funny before midnight.
Okay, thank you.